Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Tonight's episode will be a little bit more sober, a lot more sombering as well than last week's episode. We had a rant-tastic, amazing, yell-fast last week, and this week we decided we wanted to do something a little bit more serious and something to talk about the goings-ons in our friend's life. But without too much further ado, we kind of want to give you a little update on the show. Tonight, we're going to go commercial-free. All of them will be live commercials. And instead of going over to our Patreon page or going anywhere, head over to the GoFundMe page for Team Tiny Dancer and make sure you show your support for their project. And we're going to have an interview from Jeremiah, the co-founder of this, here in a few minutes. We also want to make sure everybody knows that we have some great shows coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking about Trump Care. And yeah, I'm going to call it Trump Care because I just want to be a not nice person about it, I guess is the best way to say that. And we're also going to be talking with David Teachout about mindfulness and whether it's just woo-woo crap or if there's actual psychology behind it. The week after that, barring I don't go to Dallas for business, we will be doing a live debate with Aaron Furlong and our politest host, Mr. Chris Hanna. And they're going to be debating evolution. They really are. Future appearances, we have an appearance scheduled with Jennifer Bean. We have an appearance scheduled with Dan Arrow. And we also are going to be looking to talk to an old guitarist, somebody I used to play in a Christian band with. And we'll be talking to him coming up here in the next month. If you want to suggest a topic for our show, please send us some email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com because we'd love to know whatever you're all interested in. And, I don't know, maybe you even have a good guest that you can suggest to us. And before we go any farther, we also are going to be on Skeptics Brew Pub next Monday, the 27th. You're able to hear us. I don't know if it's a live show or not. I'm hoping it's a live show because I'm telling you it's a live show. But we'll post links. And then the week after that, we're going to be on Utah Outcasts. So you'll be very, very many different places that you can hear us at. But before we start our first interview, let me introduce Mr. Chris Hanna, the co-host with the most host. How are you tonight, sir?
I am not channeling my inner Dr. Seuss like you are. You just got it down tonight. We had our relatively rambunctious, lightly alcohol-fueled, goofy show last week, and so I'm interested in getting into some serious stuff. I had an amazing weekend myself, and so it kind of drove one of the topics that we're going to talk about later on for museums and stuff. So I'm just at my house. My daughter's sleeping because I'm taking care of dad duties tonight, and I don't know. It's just my life now is completely up in the air when it comes to planning out podcasts.
So, well, that's awesome, though. See, it allows for everything to just be a variable hodgepodge.
I love it. It's awesome. It's awesome that everything is crazy and chaotic, but it's also amazing, the moments that are great.
So tonight, we wanted to start the show off because we have a couple of topics. We're going to be talking about the EPA a little bit later tonight. We're also going to be talking about museums and our appreciations for them, kind of a little bit what Chris said earlier. But our first guest tonight, we wanted to bring on the co-founder of Team Tiny Dancer, right? And I have a little clip I want to play and then an intro before I bring him on. So we are very proud to present Team Tiny Dancer.
She wanted to show everybody, first of all, her super cool stuffed animals. Look at that. Wow, people have been bringing you stuff, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah? But you wanted to say hi to people.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say thank you for the stuffed animals. And I hope you're not too worried about me everyone because I'll do okay. I'll make sure that I do fine.
Yeah. A lot of people love you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You love a lot of people too, don't you?
Yeah.
All right. Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
On March 18th, 2015, doctors at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital in Grand Rapids, Michigan, discovered that Jeremiah's 11-year-old daughter, Samantha Lee, a.k.a. Sammy, was suffering from a rare and deadly childhood form of brain cancer, a grade 3 anaplastic astrocytoma. The journey Jeremiah and his family have traveled since the diagnosis, a little over 2 years ago, has been a road filled with love, laughter, tears, joy, heartbreak, life, death, and above all else, smiling. The love that the community we are a part of, both online and in Grand Rapids, has taken the journey along with them. And here tonight, we've asked Jeremiah to join us and talk about how the life of Sammy continues to live on through the stories, adventures, and pictures we've all come to love. Jeremiah Bannister is the host of Paleo Radio on PRR Radio and Spreaker. He is a journalist, writer, public speaker, Christian lay apologist turned counter-apologist, and he's a husband of one and father of 4. Please welcome to the show Jeremiah Bannister, the voice of the paleocrat, the bearded apostate, the amazing, the awesome, the Jeremiah Bannister. Welcome to the show, sir.
Keep heaping it on, man. I wasn't done. I was enjoying listening to all of the amazing things you had to say about me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And, of course, my fantabulous daughter and the powerful story that she lived and the way that she loved. And so I'm really grateful that you guys have invited me on tonight. I really appreciate it. The last time I was on, we were in the thick of a crazy election.
Yeah,
that's true. Crazy.
Yeah, I think that's the night that Donna Brazile, she was being interviewed by one of the guys over at the Young Turks, and she's lying through her teeth about not sharing the questions with Hillary, and she just looks like she's in a trance. I mean, she looked just crazy, and I remember the guy from the Young Turks rolled his eyes. And I think it was just yesterday she publicly admitted for all the world to just finally just rest it that, yes, in fact, she did share those with Hillary Clinton. She took that on the chin months and months and months later. And only after being busted in the most extraordinary way. Yeah. So it's been a while. Awesome. It's been a while, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, and we wanted to have you on. It's kind of, I call it a life anniversary, right? I don't want to call it an anniversary, a death anniversary. It's a life anniversary because your family and some of the struggles that Sam went through in her life have been very touching to not just me and Hannah, but to so many other people. And we want to be able to come here and kind of talk about Sam's life. We want to be able to celebrate it a little bit. And we wanted to give your family some time to heal. I didn't feel it would be appropriate if, a month afterwards we're like, hey, come on the show, And the whole point of being able to talk with you is to be able to bring your friendship and everything that you guys have been through to the public so that everybody can help experience and share the greatness that was Team Tiny Dancer.
I appreciate that you guys allowed that time and allowed that space, and I needed it. And it's kind of weird because I've never been so close to death before, ever. I've never seen somebody die in that way. I've never carried anybody who was dead or touched anybody in that way. And I didn't know what the grieving process would be like. In fact, I've read very little about it. I've never been in any kind of college level course where they're talking about matters quite like this, about the way that you live through it and kind of common themes and cycles that people tend to go through. And so I decided I was just going to let myself experience that. And it's hilarious looking back, even maybe now a little, But looking back, especially to say, man, there were a lot of times where I kind of just thought that I was out of it. Well, I'm really turning a leaf, folks. I think I can do X, Y, or Z, and very quickly realized how difficult that was going to be on my heart and how difficult that would be on my mind and on my day. Especially when I've committed, and I mean this. Some people have asked me this, said, we've noticed you don't post as much online anymore. You don't write long form stuff at all. Zero, none. And I said, go back and read some of the last ones I wrote. I was talking and making promises to my family that Papa is going to be there for them, and that this time is not for going online very much. It's not for getting in debates about policy very often. In fact, I try not to read too much news in between when I absolutely must for the show. I co-host a show with Joe Elder, as mentioned earlier, Paleo Radio. I created the show, and so it's tough. We talk current events, kind of like John Oliver, where you're looking at the week prior, and it's hard. I don't even want to look at it. And so I spend a lot of time with the kids. I've been drawing a lot, spending a lot of time playing guitar, spending a lot of time. Yeah, man, I'm loving it. I've got a Epiphone.studio, semi-hollow body, an Fender, beautiful acoustic. And so I've been playing a lot. I've been writing a lot, spending a lot of time playing hoops, even sprained my ass. I mean, that really happened. That really.
Is there a vine? Is there a vine of it? Can we see this, like that slow motion jerk in pain and then the slow drag of the flat tire off the court?
I'll tell you. Well, it was hilarious, man, because I was balling it. I know that my frame would maybe mislead people because I'm not super buff, believe it or not. I'm not like super tall and buff and handsome square chin guy. Playing hoops, but I'm good, and I used to be very good. So in my mind, I know quite a bit about the game. I know quite a bit about technique and style. I was MVP on my small Christian school team. I don't want to make it sound like it was something bigger than it was, but it's still a thing. I mean, I still got awards for it, and so in my mind, I'm there. But I'm 39 on the 27th of this month. Just for anybody who may want to give me a birthday present, you're more than welcome. I love them. So you just make sure to connect with me on Facebook. And so, I went and I'm playing, but I'm almost 39, and I'm still about 25 pounds overweight right now, 20 to 25 over what I'd be comfortable with. And so I went up for this jump shot, and when I landed, man, it was a real bummer. But I still played. I played the whole game, and I played another game after that, shot 100% from the floor. Made 2 3-pointers, made a whole bunch of shots, but dude, I couldn't even jump for rebounds. Right in my face, I'm like, yeah, nah, I'm just gonna leave that. So, so I've been doing stuff like that. I've been hanging out with my kids. My kids are in Taekwondo. My son's in basketball. In fact, you can go and you can see what my Saturdays were like. My weekends are toast. They're completely consumed with other things at this point in my life. I'm involved with CFI. I host Cafe Inquiry now. So we're super busy in real life.
You've got some other stuff on the burners too. So like you're working on some written stuff that's not going to be something that people are going to get episodic content for.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm writing this book, and it's the most humbling and beautiful and hard thing that I've ever done. More than the eulogy. And the eulogy is available if people would like to hear that. And if they would like to hear, I'm doing stuff even with Samantha's speech, the God and Cancer videos that I'm working on. The only video that I have, there was another one, and I can't find it, and I'm beating myself up real bad over it. But I have another one. I have the last one that I have remaining. And we're making a video out of it where it's going to be her, in her words, talking about cancer, talking about the afterlife, talking about her fears of death. I'm working on that. That's not fun in the traditional, ordinary sense of the term. Like, not even close. not remotely close. It's enjoyable in the sense that I can hear her. It's enjoyable in the sense that I can see her move and she's not frozen in time. And she's not a faint image in my mind. But it's hard. And so on the one hand, it is a beautiful honor to put together her thoughts and her words, her emotions, and you can see it. But at the same time, everything that I do in regards to Team Tiny Dancer, there is an element of pain. There's an element of sadness. And so everything is bittersweet, and it took time. And so I'm really grateful that you guys allowed me that space, and that's the reason why you did that. David Smalley did that too. I talked to David about a couple things. David Smalley from Dogma Debate. We talked about it. A number of different decisions that were made early on after Sammy died. And I was curious as to why I wasn't more involved or why I wasn't considered. And he brought up the same thing. And what are you going to say to that? Like, what are you going to say? You just thank you, I guess. It's just like spraining your butt. Right? You might think that you can do certain things, and you might even do them. But when you land, it might hurt more than you can handle, and then you might spasm and lock up and need some friends to rely on. And all that stuff really happened in real life too, of course. You might need a shot. You might need meds. All sorts of therapy.
Everybody thinks this is just pure metaphor here. Yeah. No, this is literal. Oh, no. Everything is literal here. We are talking about gluteus maximus ripping. Yes. It's an interesting way to add a nice lighthearted end to it. I definitely, you and I, we've had, small meetings here and there and hung out a little bit, but Chris has always been involved with you a lot more. And so one of the things that I always tried whenever I would talk with Chris about it, it's just, I'm sitting back until, Jeremiah's on the scene again to the point where it's like, okay, he's full board to where he's running around shooting out headlines and pulling butt muscles and all that. Like that's the point when it's like let's go do stuff, let's talk politics or whatever. And so I mean, I always imagine the same situation. It's like I know I would want my space, and if people were trying to get in there, it would just upset me. That's just kind of how I am. And so I'm glad that everybody kind of understood that no, he worked really hard, and once Team Tiny Dancer needed to have a little break and he could work on his own things and find his own place and everything, that's what everybody did. It's just a great thing of our community and all of our friends just doing the right thing for once. It's just nice to hear.
There are some things, and I think that everybody's done pretty well about it. People say things like, I'd like to give you space. As a human, we're social creatures. And so after a while, that space turns into some loneliness. You're welcome to reach out to me again. I would like to go out and do things again. There are things in my life that I would like to do. Hi, and so, yeah, right. So, those kind of things and other ones too. There were some even professional things like, and I'll say this, I've said this on the air. There was a professional decision that was made regarding, I proposed a debate, bringing up Smalley again, David Smalley. I proposed a debate with him regarding Donald Trump and regarding certain things to do about skepticism and different matters like that. And I brought it up while he was here. He was visiting Samantha in the hospital at Beaumont, which was the final. She was there not even for 10 days. It was a short period of time that she was there as the end of her life. And so it was, I'm a wreck too at that point. I mean, I'm in a real zone. And it wasn't long after that. I mean, probably within 2 months, there was a debate between him and Robert Price that took place on this issue. And Robert Price is just eminently unqualified to talk about that. I mean, I don't mean to be a jerk to him, but he's beyond unqualified. And I would tell him that. I hope he hears me say that. I do, because nothing he'd ever done prior to that. I remember reading the status update where he said, maybe I should do a political podcast now because, I guess I'm now into politics. And so, no, thanks. But
don't do that.
Right, don't do that. And so, but people they were respectful of my time. You know, they were respectful of my emotions and of my family and the urgency and the needs that we had going on, not just leading up to it, but the fallout, man. You know, people who know me know that I'm the kind of guy that would like to, when I'm going through this, I'm not going to have my head down. I'm not tossing ashes up into the sky, weeping and wailing and wearing all black. I do wear a lot of black, but not because I'm a mourner, right? Not because I'm weeping and wailing and gnashing my teeth. But, you know, you can think all you want, but it's like, again, the sprain. It's like you think you can do it, but man, you ain't moving. You ain't doing it. And so it took time, but I'm at a place now. I said on the last show, I would love to do debates at this point. I'd love to do panels and discussions and interviews and all sorts of things. I'm kind of chomping at the bit about this stuff. And I'm able to because a very strict rule regarding productivity and saying, you know, not going online just to jabber with people, but to say, I'm going to produce something. I'm actually going to create something original. And that's what I'm going to share. And so, you know, kind of focusing more on advancing things forward with what I'm doing as an individual, not just as a family person, but also as an individual. And so, yeah, I think I'm at a decent place all around, you know, as a husband, as a dad, as a man who's lost a daughter, as a friend who lost a friend, right? And as someone who's reeled from that in his own interesting way through that process to come to a point where I can, in confidence, say that I'm desirous and to move forward with a number of projects. Not to overwhelm myself, though.
It's a Stuart Smalley moment right there, man. You're good enough. Yeah. You're smart enough. And doggone it, people like you.
Yeah.
Al Franken's been doing great when it comes to all the political stuff lately. So I don't know if you've been watching all that. The lovely Grand Rapids part of the Trump campaign has been pretty rough for Mrs. DeVos, and so the education stuff's been fun. We've been bouncing on a little bit about that. I figure you've been following it, but I haven't seen you yell too much about it.
You're going to see more of it. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm going to begin. We've already started kind of cutting videos and stuff down for the kids, for the show, for myself, different things, making memes, things like that. I'm beginning to. I haven't made a Facebook Live video or a Periscope in months and months. About the same amount of time as writing a long form video, but you'll see more of that too. And getting about political stuff. It's kind of tough though because I'm in a bind. You know, and maybe people who are listening to this and are part of the world that I'm in can help me with this. But it's kind of hard because, on the one hand, I've rather enjoyed the time that I spent, the year and a half that I spent on my wall talking only about family matters, right? I don't want to talk about things, though, if it just comes across very sad. And I don't want to be like, well, we're frozen in time either. I don't want to just talk Sam stuff all the time. On the other hand, I would love to post political stuff on Paleo Radio. That's we're now verified, so you can go and see Paleo Radio with a check mark. But Facebook, but Facebook kind of sucks. And the way pages work and visibility, there's a lot of people who are like, man, I really wish you were on the radio. And I'm like, bro, home slice, you're following me on. Like, how are you not seeing this? It's the way it operates. There are deficiencies. It's just how it works. And so
unless you give them money,
and so that kind of, you're right. Unless you give them money,
yeah.
And we're under some sanctions actually with Facebook. Interestingly enough, we've tried to appeal 2 different times, and I won't get into much beyond that, other than to say it's complete BS, Mark Zuckerberg, and you know it is. So the whole thing's garbage, right? And we've tried very, very hard to convince them, but they're this ghost. Like, are they even real? If you've seen the movie Trolls, like it's almost like the letters that were sent, not trolls, storks, where the letters are sent for the babies, you know, and they never check them anymore. But there's millions of these things anyway. So
I was going to go with a bunch of Agent Smiths running around. I don't know anything about the troll movies, but it's just like a bunch of Phantom Smiths running around.
That's because your kid's not old
shadow
enough.
banning everybody. Yeah, I know.
It's made it really hard, But so I've got that. I also have a personal official page or whatever, public profile page. I've never shared it. I've never done anything. It has like 100-something people who follow it. Not hardly anything, but the people who did searched it out, right? Like those people must be looking for it. So that's at the Paleocrat, and you can find that, or Paleocrat. You can see me with my mega dope mustachio and beard. That's what my profile picture is, and so you're starting to see it. The tentative observer is starting to see the writing on the walls that engines are starting to crank up and wheels are starting to turn. And
I was imagining more of the rhino scene in Ace Ventura, where Jim Carrey's kind of working his way out of the back of the.
Hannah, no.
It works. Hey, man, it's kind of how I feel.
It is. So,
how I feel.
Are you able to stick around with us, Jeremiah, for a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. What I want to do is I got a quick live commercial, and then we'll be right back. If you would like to join the ranks and sponsor the show on Patreon, please head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or energy drink every week, you can help sponsor the hosts of this show and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and will help you stay healthy by drinking one less energy drink or soda every bloody week. So sponsor us today, because we bring the discussion with the sources. Now back to your regular programming. All right, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics with limited commercials tonight.
Who's the guy with the deep voice there?
I don't know. It wasn't me. Anyway, welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. We are talking with Jeremiah Bannister, co-founder, Team Tiny Dancer, co-founder, Paleo Radio. And
the Paleocrat.
Well, that's his own. I mean, that's his own name right there. I can't. He doesn't give credit to anybody for that one. But we were talking a little bit earlier about his daughter, Samantha, and how she's impacted a lot of our lives and the different things that have gone on since her passing last July. And one of the big things here is to look at kind of, it's been 2 years since the diagnosis. 2 years. And, that this doesn't seem like a lot of time. There's been so many things that have happened. And one of the big things here, the reason we wanted to talk with Jeremiah is because Samantha has touched more than just one person's life. She's touched more than family life. She's touched more than just the average individual, right? She's reaching, I don't know, we can ask Jeremiah in a second, but she was reaching thousands and thousands and thousands of people closer to the time of her passing. And so we want to talk now with Jeremiah a little bit about her inspirations for him, how he's going to help continue to carry her legacy on. So please welcome back to the show, Mr. Jeremiah Bannister.
I can't hear whether you've got that clap track or not, but I sure hope you got it. I sure hope you got it ruined.
My
soundproofing in the room here, you can't hear the wild mob of people standing outside cheering and protesting, of course, my existence. Because when you said I'm the Paleocrat, I am I am the OG on that, and kind of like the Dalai Lama, basically, something similar to that manifestation of something or other, me. But with Sam, yeah, man, here's the thing: 2 years ago, when all this happened, it was life-changing in the most revolutionary way you can imagine, because you just don't expect it. You say, well, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to go check it out and find out what's going on because I'm kind of worried with some of the stuff that's happening. You can expect a lot of stuff, right? And I was worried. I mean, there were signs and symptoms, and I encourage people to go back. We've done a large number of videos and posts about it. I'm writing a book about it as well. But we were worried about it, and you think, man, what's going to happen? Is it something in the brain? Is it something? How is she going to be able to walk? Is she losing her ability to walk? And then they come back and they tell you it's cancer. I mean, that will shake you. First thing in the morning too. I mean, it was early when we found when they told us the news. I mean, it was super early in the morning. So years, 2 years now have gone by. And I see these memories all the time on Facebook. And I've mentioned my Facebook a couple times, but I encourage people more than anything, go to facebook.com/Team Tiny Dancer Forever. That is Samantha's wall. That is the wall that she used while alive. And that is the wall that we're going to be using for that. But I don't know. It's a difficult thing to see these memories and to see them. And I have a love-hate relationship with them, with Facebook's newsfeed on it going and seeing. Because
when you mentioned it, man,
yeah.
I just got a shiver. I don't know. I see those every once in a while, and I just think that is going to be trouble if nothing. I mean, if it hasn't been good throughout a long period of time, like every once in a while you say something and you're like, I wasn't really happy about that. But I mean, to have you had so much content go out, you probably see stuff pretty regularly.
All the time, every day I see something. And you mentioned in the beginning when you were describing Samantha, you only had one error, and that was that you said she was 11. She was actually 10 when she found out, and she turned 11 not long after that. But that's a decent amount of time if you think about it. She was alive for 16 months after diagnosis, and in that 16 months, we documented her life in an extraordinary way. I mean, we were very, very, very public. There were only a couple times where I would kind of vanish for weeks at a time. And that didn't happen very often. But it did. There were times where I would kind of just go my own way and I didn't want to deal with things, But we made it really public. And so every single day when you get on Facebook and you check out your news feed, well, you're going to see things. And so most of the time, of course, I mean, Samantha lived this epic life. I mean, every day she was putting smiles on people's faces, but she was also putting tears in people's eyes. And so it's kind of like reliving some of it sometimes. I'm okay with it most of the time. Every once in a while, I haven't gotten mad about anything, and I can't imagine in this situation getting mad about something that, or feeling like, oh, don't show me that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that pain. I'm gonna have a lot of pain in my lifetime, if you think about it. I'm not oblivious to the studies that have been done about people who lose children. I'm not oblivious to these things and the kind of emotional difficulties that they find themselves. I mean, just even the life expectancy of it is, and I'm not the kind of guy that believes that, like, people believe astrology and stuff like that. Like, oh, it says I'm going to die at this age, or, but I'm aware, and I'm aware also that I could go through the same or even worse pains in my life than she went through. I'd be much older, of course. It wouldn't be nearly as offensive, not even close. But I see it. And so a couple of days ago, I saw somebody shared on my wall. I didn't even see it because my phone's been dead. I just said, I'm going to leave my phone. I got a lot of work to do. So somebody shared it. I saw it on my computer, and it was the video or a picture of Samantha where they said that she was diagnosed, and it just took me by storm, and I wept. And the thing is, that's the second time that some kind of thing came up that I wasn't really thinking about. I wasn't thinking about the 6 month. That 6 months had passed and somebody brought that up to me, and I said, no, actually it's a different day. It's not the same day, and then I realized it was off by one. So it's been 5 months and all the days but one. And so, stuff like that. And then to see this and to see that picture. So today I knew what was kind of coming soon. I knew that I would begin to see other things around this time. But I was delighted, in fact, to see today the video of her where she encouraged everyone to not be too scared and not to worry too much. That video changed everything. That you mentioned how there were a lot of people following her. Toward the end, the highest it ever got was 97,000 people. Now, 97,000 people on Facebook that were talking about her at one time. So she was a, back when they would do popular searches and stuff like that, they had a really cool kind of blue thing that would indicate that it was popular. There were more than 1,000 people talking about it and using that hashtag. She was a popular search for like 5 months, a real long time. I mean, we're talking altogether, if you think about it, and you think about how many people did she touch in that span, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe over 1 million people. And I'm not trying to bloat anything. I'm saying, like, for real. Like, if you have a girl whose stuff is being shared, there were a couple of things that was shared hundreds of times. I mean, you've got you're talking numbers that just start booming, 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 booming. Everything's in the thousands. Everything's. I mean, so this stuff adds up. And how many people talk to people that, I mean, I know individuals in towns, like I know one, for example, one town, there was a woman there, older, who wanted to have Samantha's obituary in a newspaper. And so they put it in the newspaper. So there are a lot of people who have talked to me. They're not on Facebook at all. And they've come up and talked to me. There are people in other states. I mean, there are people that I know personally that I thought I knew through other means, that months and months, like maybe a year and a half later, I come to find out that the way that they know me is through Samantha. And they live like Washington State. I mean, people I don't even know, people in Pennsylvania, all over the country that know of Samantha's story, not friends with me. I've seen so many. This is actually a fun thing to do. It used to be really fun to go in and see how many people are sharing her story or who have her picture as their profile picture, who aren't friends with anybody. Like, even in my friends network, they're just people, they're just floaters out there who somehow stumbled on the story and they have embraced it. A family from Colorado was that way.
Yeah, and so because we shared quite a few updates. Right. And I have a family member who will remain nameless, who traveled to the funeral just for the funeral. That's how closely she followed the story. And in our family, we didn't have the cancer bouts with the children like you did. I mean, there's been death, but nothing of this magnitude. And the sheerness of how Sammy was able to interact with the public, how she was able to interact with people through you and through Angela and through the other kids, was amazing. And it touched so many people. But along with that, I mean, your family needed some time, right? What about recovery? What other things have you guys done? And if it's too personal, you don't have to answer.
No, you can ask anything. I mean this. I have and this is for the record. This is for the record. I mean, my speeches since Sammy's death, I have committed my speeches to the concept of the Paleocrat Diaries, to say, and I tell people at the beginning of speeches, I say, basically, I hope you enjoy the sound of me smashing my heart against the wall. Because this is what's going to happen, flat out. Like, what you're about to hear is a thing. My daughter died. Like, man, I'm gonna open up from my heart, and I'm talking about things that are, I'm in a vulnerable place, willingly. I'm thrusting myself into that place to say, just hurling myself headfirst to say, I am going to put my heart on the line. And to talk about situations with Samantha and with myself and with my family and with my life, the things that I've done, good, bad, ugly, you name it. And so you can ask away, dude. I implore you, please ask to your heart's content. Yeah. You asked about recovery first.
I do, and I want to. I pose this, Jeremiah, for a reason, because I don't want to minimize any of the harshness that you went through, but there's other people out there that suffer. And one of the big things that Sammy taught me was that no matter what happens with me, there's others out there. There's other people that need help. There's other families that are going to have to go through the same thing. And I remember you told me a story shortly after her death about how they're starting to use some of the things she said and some of the different video clips and stuff none of us have probably ever seen in the hospitals, in these children's hospitals. And so for me, the recovery is not so much as I want to look into Jeremiah's life as it is, how can we present this to help others that have to go through the same thing?
With a smile.
With a smile.
With a smile. I mean, with a smile and tears coming down your face. I mean, you're kind of, it's distorted. It's almost a deranged predicament to be in the first place. The injustice of so much of it. But to say, how do you cope with things? I had somebody one time toward the end, and I mean, like by toward the end of Sammy's life, I mean, she was in a coma. She could not speak. We didn't know if she could hear, anything like that. But I have a friend lives just outside Nashville, Tennessee, and he called me. He's a big recording guy, studio guy, and he calls me and just baffled, totally blown away. Doesn't understand, how do you do it? And he's confused. He's literally begging. He's going through a hard time of his own, and has gone through even harder times since. Had a stroke since, and we visited him and spent time with him. But he was asking this, and I said, there are a number of things that I've done. I said, but there's I don't believe there's a magic recipe. I'll put my recipe in the book I'm writing, the Team Tiny Answer story. You're gonna see what I did. And what our family has done, not only to deal with the hardship, but also in the aftermath, things that, how do you cope with the loss? Give you an example of one thing, and this is a real immediate one, is that Teresa, our youngest, she actually just turned 7 years old yesterday, and she's being held back this year. Okay, she is being held back in a way that we smile and we say, you know what, we're proud of her. But we have to accept that and you can see it. It's like a hard line in her development between pre-cancer and post-cancer. And you say, cancer impacted everybody differently. And so, how do you recover as a kid? Teresa, that was her roommate. Samantha was her roommate. It was they were best friends. We're kind of reclusive, and so they spend a lot of time together. And they lived in the same room, and they were the only girls, and they would say boys aren't allowed. So, she's dealing with it. So in dealing with the recovery part of this, we've not only set it up so that she's talking with a counselor who's also a therapist at the school, and it's not because of anything behavioral. Like, there's nothing that says, like, oh, my gosh, she's causing any problems. She's always good. Everybody loves her. She never is in trouble. There's never anything like that. But when Mama and Papa are gone all the time at, chemo, radiation, going therapy, you name it, whatever you're doing, it's really tough to do the kindergarten work. It is. It's a hard thing. So to deal with this, we've made it so that we said, you know what, no judgment about these things. And that's one way. But I wish I had so much more. I know I can give simple things like be honest with yourself. And that's a big deal. Like, people can say, well, that sounds really cliche. Every single thing I'm about to say does. But it's true. If you don't do it, you're hosed. Speak from the heart. Be honest. To give yourself space, give yourself time, allow yourself to cry. Every single thing I've said, you've heard a bazillion times. And every single thing I've said, if you do them individually and all together, it will be greatly helpful. It doesn't fix it. It doesn't make dead people come back to life. There is no such thing. Apostle David Taylor. There's no such thing. That's a story of its own. A guy said he could claiming he could raise Samantha from the dead. The guy's a total joke. I would love to debate that guy. I challenge him big time. Totally unafraid.
I'm sure he listens to our show.
Well, we need to share it with him. I know his people are practically stalking me. So
it's a running thing that we've talked about on the show. I'm pretty sure we said that we had President Obama watch the show or listen to the show at one point. The
Hillary, Pope.
Yeah. Everybody is like, whenever we're talking about them, it's like, man, when they listen to our show, they're going to get upset. There's no way that this guy is not listening if the Pope listened.
Yeah.
Hey, I interviewed the Pope.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's a story for another day, though.
Yeah. Well, the Pope from Kansas, so it's a story for another day. Okay.
So it's not the real Pope. You didn't interview the Italy Pope.
That's the debate. That's the debate. Right. Apparently, he's Pope Michael. He's a first. His mom and dad would have been. So anyway, I really did. But you simply just live it. I mean, and it's weird. I used to think it was so weird, and I can tell you the exact place where I thought it most profoundly, most deeply, was a friend of mine. She lost her son. Her son committed suicide, and she was her family's Roman Catholic. They had 9 kids. She'd lost a couple, and she lost this one to suicide. They came home and found him. He had a rosary and a Bible out, and he taken a bunch of pills and was vomiting nastiness. And so I go to this funeral that they gave him. They gave him a Catholic funeral, even though he committed suicide. Gave him a Catholic funeral. And I remember I was with the people as they're walking in and everything. And I'm standing by the door, and I see the mom. And she comes in and she's crying. And she says, "My baby." And she's wailing. And it was so raw. And she lunged at the casket and she threw herself over it. And she cried out to God. And she wondered why. And months later, she's going about her business. She's living life. She's moving on. That's a part of her life that's super painful. And I was so confused. And I thought, how is it even possible? I was trying to understand the mind and the heart of someone who just so passionately loved their child and lost that person. And I have now lived it. I have experienced it the hard way. And it's the weirdest shit in the world to say there are days where you just you don't cry. There are days where all of a sudden you don't even think about it, and it creeps up on you, and you say, "Did I even think about Samantha for a couple days?" I don't know how or why all of this stuff works the way it does. But it is so old. It is so ancient, this thing inside of us that just keeps us going. And I look at it and I say, there's part of it that says, in my case, I'm especially fortunate because unlike others, I'm in a place where the girl that died that I lost was the most inspiring human being I've ever known. And that person told me, gave me commissions for life and said things like, "Don't hate." That's huge. That is so huge. To say things like never give up. To say things like keep on smiling. And so, in my case, that ancient and primal thing of moving forward and not offing yourself. And some people do. I have no ambitions of this. Zero. I have no plans. Good. I have I'm doing good, folks. But to sit there and say it's an extraordinary thing to experience the process. But it's good, too, because now I feel like I'm in a good place, like my man Yanni, right? My man Yanni the musician. Of course, he's a big fan of my show, of course. But he talked one time. He had a concert. It's beautiful, and I encourage everybody to go check it out. He was, it's down. I think it's in Cuba, and it's beautiful. Or Puerto Rico, and I forget one of the two, but it's gorgeous. And he said that a lot of people will write poetry and songs and music as they're going through the throes of a situation. His method is different. And he said that he will allow himself to be fully invested in the situation. And then when it's over, to allow himself to kind of recoil and regather and regain. And when he does, to then approach the subject matter. And that's where I am. And we mentioned that earlier, about this, but especially with the book, that now I can go and I can look at these things. So for me, not only is there the commission to just never give up, keep on smiling, keep on keeping on, that kind of stuff, but there's also an inspiration now. There's a motivation and a calm about it to be able to embrace the pain easier and to put it on paper without falling into a million pieces every single time, right? Because it's hard. Imagine writing chapters of this stuff. I mean, it's tough. Yeah. You're always looking for an out all the time. You're always looking. Your brain is going, I don't know. Maybe I should check my Facebook instead of write this chapter. Because boy, you can go to Facebook and see your likes and have that dopamine thing of candy. Or you can go and write about something that's gonna make you go through what we just went through on the show. Talking to you where I'm crying. Yeah. And it's hard, but I'm there. I'm on the show. Well, I'm writing the book.
And we're glad. We cannot wait for that book to come out. And one of the things, and I don't want to keep you too long because I know your wife's probably in the background going, hold on a second. But one of the things that Sammy had talked about, for you is different ways, right, that you can help honor her. And I know one of them was quitting smoking, which I know you're doing right now, and you have been doing. But one of the things Sammy always said, and she, one of these elations, basically, kind of one of the, I always want to call them, I don't even know what to call them. How about that? I guess I don't know what to call them. But she had such a wisdom about her when you don't want to take on too much, right? You need to live in the moment. You need to keep on smiling. You need to understand that you can't change everything. And we don't need to get into a whole religious debate here, and because you and I probably feel very similar about how religion and grief work together. And maybe that's another episode in 6 months or something like that. But one of the things that she brought up was the quitting smoking thing. And that's what you're doing. But it's hard to always make your commitments, right?
It's hilarious, actually, because as you were saying that, people don't know this, but we're on Skype. So I can see you in your house. I can see Hannah in his, and you guys can see mine in my studio, my little room here. And so we can see each other. And as you're saying that, I have my mic muted, and I'm just chiefing away. I mean, it's like a big plume, this cloud of smoke. I'm just dragon balling this stuff, and and I have his e-cig. But here's the thing: this is 0%. This is zero nicotine, man. Like I'm at a point now in my life where I went from 32 or 34 when I started, which is that's what a regular cigarette would be, to now being I guess it would be around close to 1% because I put a little bit of something in there that has something. So you have basically 1%. So it's like taking, if you take a drag off of a cigarette and you get 32, I'd have to take 32 drags of this e-cig to get one hit off of a cigarette. I mean, so I'm working hard. And I told Samantha, it's funny you brought this up because I actually told her around Christmas of 2015 that I would quit, that my goal was to quit by March of 2016, Well, I did not do that.
For understandable reasons.
That's my whole point. I am not judging myself at all. But you know what? My birthday's coming up. And I've been calculating this. And so I've been dwindling down starting around Thanksgiving. And I'm to the point now where I'm basically I'm at the point where I'm chasing this freaking dragon because there's nothing in it. And so at this point, my brain's already accepted the fact that this is just simply telling my body, you don't need to grab it anymore. But it's hard. It's like any other technology or any other device or thing like that. It becomes kind of an extension of yourself, right? It becomes you nurse on it at night. You put it close to your pillow. It's the last thing you kiss and the first thing you kiss in the morning. So it's kind of that thing. But I'm to the point where I want to stop. And I think it's good. I think, as I said, getting into playing basketball a number of times a week, losing weight. I put on some weight after Sam died, and I've lost all that weight effectively. That weight is now I'm back to where I was when Reason Rally was around. And I have about 20 pounds left to go. I'm getting back into art, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting back into music. I'm really enjoying it. All of these different things. It's getting me to a place where I just feel like I can approach this now, and super pumped about it. And so I'm excited about the book. The book is going to rock. And I already went and found, I've kind of been scouting where it can be published, what it can look like. I want sovereign control over it. I mean, I do. I don't want what Justin Schieber had with his book, which is, I encourage you to go pick it up. But, very little control. Publishers have control over titles. They have control over styles and pictures and everything you want. We're an artistic family. I mean, it's going to have pictures. I think how we described it. We've said that it's a diary inside of a photo album, inside of a scrapbook, is what we've called it. Sounds and good. So it's going to be epic. I promise. I'm giving it every single thing I have, every bit of education, every bit of hard work, talent, just stuff I'm born with, and my skill set, everything, and my friends list, people that I'm pooling in on certain things to pool in on this project, because it's going to be something that I truly believe. It's not even a question. It's going to dramatically impact tons and tons and tons of people. Period. End of story. Because her story is amazing. Because her story is amazing. Because her story will change people's lives. Period. It will change who you are. I don't know how many people can learn of her story and not look back on themselves with a little bit of shame. In fact, most people who hear me say that would be shaking their heads going, well, that's a nice way to qualify it. Say a lot, right, of embarrassment and shame, and saying, man, if that girl can do this, if that girl can smile through that, so anyway.
So tell everybody where they can follow you for Team Tiny Dancer updates, yes. And also where can we get the book when it comes out? Or where can we find out? How about this? I don't care where we can find the book, because I don't want you to tell me. I want you to tell me where I can find out where I can buy the book. There you go. See, I corrected myself live.
At the same exact place as I encourage everybody to go first. I'll only give a couple .coms, and so I encourage people, if they're listening live, they're not familiar with these, make sure to write them down. If you can't write as fast as I'm talking, make sure to go back and check the timestamp and where we are and things like that. But make sure to go to facebook.com/team, like a basketball team, Tiny Dancer Forever. That is Samantha Bannister. That is her. You can look up #Team Tiny Dancer, and you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, that's going to give you a good narrative. In fact, that's the easiest way, in fact, is to and you can even see the community of people and see different people who've shared it and kind of get to know who's involved in the story. You can check out the videos, of course, if you do it that way. And I would also encourage you, and you'll see my name in there a lot, But I would encourage you to check out two different things. The first one would be my personal wall, and that's Jeremiah.Bannister. And I would also encourage you to check out Paleo Radio. It's PALEO RADIO, Paleo Radio. One word, and it's verified. So there's a little check mark. And I would encourage everybody to do that. If you follow Samantha's page at Team Tiny Dancer Forever, if you do that, you will be kept abreast with everything that we're doing with the book, with speeches that we do. We've done stuff for Make-A-Wish. I opened for Howie Mandel, kind of opened, quote unquote, for Howie Mandel. I spoke. And so did that, spoke at different places. I have speeches coming up. So you'll be kept up to date with a lot just by following Samantha. And you'll be kept up to date with Paleo Radio and my speeches and other things if you follow me personally.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Jeremiah, so much for sharing your insight and your life with us. So
Making us cry.
And making us cry.
I love you guys. I mean that. I mean that sincerely. I've included, in fact, Tanner, I'll say this last thing I'll say. I've included you specifically in a number of speeches whenever I talk about people hanging out late into the night, drinking with me, when I go through a hard time, or surrounding the time of Sammy's death, when I say there are certain friends who stick around with me late into the night and drink, cheap alcohol with me, bottom shelf for sure.
Cheap, definitely.
Like the cheapest stuff you've ever had in your life. That's you're drinking with Tanner, and that you're doing good. You'll be all right. So I love you guys sincerely. I mean that, and I'm really grateful that you guys asked me to be on.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Jeremiah, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate all that you do and all that you are. We have all the links in the description. You have to give me a few minutes to update the Team Tiny Dancer one. I had his the actual website. I'll have to throw the Facebook one in there. But before we end this, it will be on there. How about that, folks?
I need to say one more thing.
All right.
Need to say one more thing. You mentioned the GoFundMe. We have not shared the GoFundMe or asked for money for that for a while because we are planning. There's a possibility that we're going to be asking again, but there's also a possibility that we'll be doing a Kickstarter for the book, and people can do pre-orders at that point. So there's other ways that people can do it. But listen, I encourage you, just please know this. Please know that the money that you donate to our family, and people can do that. People can donate. We're not going to discourage people from donating to our family, but they just have to simply know it's not being used at this point for any kind of medical expense. It's being used for other very important expenses. And only expenses to do with the family. We're very strict about it. And people are welcome to email us to learn more about that kind of stuff. And they can do that by emailing teamtinydancer@gmail.com. And of course, we would love to do interviews, appearances, speeches, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. What we're going to do is we're going to transition. We're going to transition into a quick live break. As we strive to do our best, and we hope you enjoy our show, please consider heading right over to iTunes to give us a rating. Ratings help to push our show in front of new listeners, and since our main goal is to be able to provide more accurate content, possibly with some humor, we hope that our ratings will mean more to the people listening about the topics we present. We don't insist that you get a 5-star rating, but Hannah's favorite number is 5, and the more gold stars he gets, the more special he gets to feel today. So whatever you do, head on over to iTunes, engage with us, send us a rating, or email us at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. Now, back to the show. Wow, who is that classy dude, Mr. Hannah?
That That poor man over there, Mr. Tanner, he was trying to read this awesome commercials off, and I was just being a clown, dancing around, drinking out of 2 beer bottles and flowers in my hair, because that's just how I roll.
Yeah. And we wanted to have the Team Tiny Dancer segment tonight because that's one of the things that's weighed on my heart. It was a big part of my life, and still is. And Jeremiah is a close friend of ours. And I really wanted to give everybody an update, let everybody know. And I feel that there's always this desire for hope that we need to be able to share. And sometimes it feels like we talk way too much politics, and nothing feels good right now with the political scheme. And maybe you would disagree, but probably not. And so
I think it's more that we're 30-ish years old and we're paying attention to all that stuff, and all we can think about is like, oh my God, the whole world has been here the whole time. Yeah, well, when we were 14, we were like, dude, this is the whole world. We know everything that'll ever be needed to know. And so then when you get the sledgehammer of reality, 30, 32, 33, it hits pretty hard back, man.
Yeah. So tonight you wanted to talk about the EPA, is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the EPA is something that's been getting slammed around a lot lately, and I feel like standing up for it.
Awesome. So what inspired you, Hannah? Here, I'm going to interview you. What inspired you to do the segment? You put in here, looking through a lot of the different things, you put in here the local dangers. We talk about the Great Lakes, and one of the things that's being threatened to be cut through the budget is some of the tax dollars that go to different funds and different things for pollutants and reduction and working towards a more clean environment.
Well, the big thing is, I mean, we know the assault from the Trump budget on these types of things. Like, he wants to increase spending in defense, and he wants to reduce spending across the board and a lot of really important things. The thing that started this entire thing off, though, for me was, I'm sure everybody saw it. There were a bunch of articles that shared it, and they said, what did the United States look like before the EPA? And there's a thing called Documerica, and this is something that was done by the National Archives. And what they did was they essentially asked, because this is back in film days, so like asking for photos was a pretty big task. This isn't something where you could just, I'll send you the 300 photos I took of the dam spill down the road. Well, the Environmental Protection Agency hired freelance photographers. So they essentially hired as many people as they could who would send them these photos to document the entire country. So it was the best way that they could do it in 1971 and 1977 to try to document what the country looks like. Because at that point, photography still wasn't something that was incredibly cheap and easy to use, and good photographers were still considered in high demand. And so they send these photos out. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of photos. Well, if we have the included look, there's a Flickr page, and it has basically everything on it. Well, there's Documerica favorites, which is the Cliff's Notes, because the number of photos in here really is staggering. So what they did was they took the favorites for this entire thing. So you see, some hippie people, and you see, life, and you see airplanes flying over little suburb areas. But also you see, like, the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, just you can't even see it. There's so much smog and fog and everything. And then you see in New York City, you can't see the Twin Towers because there's like the clouds are being masked by by smog and pollution. And there are plants, and there's things and photos of it's interesting. There's a photo of Mary Workman is her name. She's holding a jar of undrinkable water. And we're talking 1971 and 1977 here, folks. So, like, when we talk about making America great again, is that the great that we want? Is that the one that we want? We want to take it back to the way it was when there were no Environmental Protection Agency fighting for us. Everybody's seen these photos of there was one shot that was just outside the Twin Towers where you could just see it looks like they took the photo from a dump site, just trash everywhere. Well, that's what triggered this for me. So, like, I've always thought the EPA was a good thing. I've never known anybody who really thought it was a bad thing. I did not expect the attack and assault that's been coming through, but it has been a very concentrated assault. And so the documentary, or all these pictures, basically ask the same question. It says, what did the the country looked like before the EPA. Well, to me, I wanted to see more specific numbers, like we talked about for Bill and I last week. Is how much better is it now? That was the first thing I wanted to know, was if we would have let it keep going. Like, those photos are pretty bad, but okay, maybe those are biased outliers, people who went out looking for pollutant environments, and they wanted to stick it to the corporations that they don't want this in their backyard. Well, that was the thing for me. So I guess just for a little back and forth on this one, Tanner, did you see any of these shares or anything like that, these photos and stuff? Oh, and what do you know about the EPA and stuff?
Well, so some of these are just horrendous, and I like the medium, I guess, and that's the nicest way to say it. Is I like the medium of creating emotion sometimes, and
through photos.
Yes, through photos, through music, through videos. I do think sometimes it can be a propaganda if it's used, in the wrong way, but I don't have a problem with some of these and how they're being portrayed. So, for example, they have a kid with a lawnmower, right? And he's holding his ear up like he can't hear the old lady. And you could think, well, maybe it's because the old lady's not talking loud enough, right? But no.
Maybe.
If you've ever driven a lawnmower, like one of the first lawnmowers, I used to have to mow the lawn. And one of the first lawnmowers, ours was deafening. And I remember my dad would be like, "Yeah, take the filter out, and don't worry about putting it back on. Just mow the lawn, son. Just mow the lawn." And then nowadays I sit there and I think about that, and I was like, "That was a horrible idea. Why would he ever tell me that?" Well, he's Republican, so what do you? Sorry. Anyway, but you look at some of these other photos, and I get that it's a very emotionally driven sensation here, but it's real. They're not fake photos. They're not like somebody went out of their way to embellish this.
It's direct representation of reality. It really is.
Yes. And so to think that before the EPA existed, we had unregulated federations. And I, in the same way you are, I don't understand why people don't like the EPA in any way, shape, or form, right?
Well, we're not rich.
Exactly. I would say we don't own our own businesses, but in all fairness, you do. But we're not. But I am pretty
EPA.
Yeah,
I'm pretty EPA conscious. So, like that, the small business world is different than the big giant corporate world. And so, like little guys, I concentrate on recycling, and I don't dump my oil in the creek behind my building. Like those are things that little shops do, and sometimes they don't, because it's too expensive to comply with the EPA. So there's a double-edged sword there.
Well, look at it this way, right? Think about it this way. I worked for a company, and here, if the EPA is actually listening to this, maybe they'll come and I'll tell them the name of the company. But I worked for this company, and we sold cleaning supplies that also include floor stripper. When we had out-of-date floor stripper that didn't work anymore, you know what we did with it? Take a guess.
Put it on sale.
No. If nobody would buy it, what did we do with it?
You dumped it in the yard.
They dumped it down the drain, and guess where we were? We were below sea level, my friend. So not only are and we were close to a river. Literally, you could throw a stone from my shop to the river. That's how close we are. Now, I'm not saying that the stripper got into the river, right? I'm not saying that. But I am saying that, we're that close. There's environmental reasoning behind it. And it's all because the one day we only had one chemical dump day, and we could only donate so much. So we could only get rid of so much before they're like, okay, hold on, we don't want some of this stuff. So they used to make me dump it out.
Or you got to pay money. Or you got to pay money to get them to take it. Yeah. So we've experienced this. We've seen this. We know corporations are a major culprit of this. It costs them money to get rid of the chemicals, and so this has to be part of their business plan. This has to be part of their balance sheet, is properly paying for getting rid of chemicals that cannot just be dumped into the yard. And what changed in the 70s when the EPA was created was we had things like acid rain, we had lead gas, widespread air pollution, but we don't really have that anymore. If you look at the differences that we've seen when it comes to just acid rain alone, this is basically what causes acid rain. It's pollution mixing with water vapor in the air and little droplets or whatever. and it oxidizes. And so what it does is it creates all kinds of different chemicals that eat into things like concrete and paint. And so acid rain was a really big problem. I don't know if you remember, they taught acid rain when I was in elementary school. I remember them teaching me about it.
Well, I went to a private school, so we only got a little bit of that. A little bit.
So you saw, like, there's the melting acid from the sky. Well, this was a big deal. Then they said, like, the reason why, in certain environments, the buildings crumble in a very short period of time is because the acid rain eats the concrete. And I remember being so astounded by that. Like, rain can destroy concrete. And obviously, in 1990, there were amendments made to the Clean Air Act that gave the EPA authority to regulate sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. And these are two of the things. NOx, the big Volkswagen thing that we talked about, that's NOx, nitrogen oxide. Well, anyways, these pollutants cause acid rain. And so, despite doomsday warning for some in the power industry, the regulations would call electricity price. It's a spike. In 25 years, acid rain levels are down 60%, and electricity prices have stayed stable. So they the fear mongering said, the corporation said, we can't handle these regulations. It'll cost too much. Well, there's evidence that it didn't do the same thing. And the same thing happened with leaded gasoline. Gasoline gas had gotten more expensive. But when they phased out the gasoline in the 70s, 88% of American children had elevated levels of lead in their blood. And by the mid-2000s, the number dropped to less than 1%. And it's been increasing because we haven't been paying attention to other infrastructure problems that have lead in them.
And the reason, and everybody listening, the big thing here, the reason we're talking about this tonight, right, is because there's a budget cut, and we will talk, we will talk about some of the budget. We wanted to stay, we didn't want to spend too much time on the Trump budget this week, and we didn't want to spend too much time on Trump care. But those are things. What they're trying to do, and one of the big things they're trying to do is take away money from some of these other programs. Well, the EPA is looking at, like, it could get a 25% cut.
Yeah.
That's what they're claiming. Now, it's not clear exactly what that means, right? So, they haven't come out and said, we're going to do this, and this. They just said, this is the dollars we're going to cut out of it. This is the percentage you're going to lose.
That's the presidential budget recommendation. So, like, the presidential budget comes in and it's kind of like, hey, Congress, you guys should kind of sort of do this. And Congress takes it, and then they manipulate it and decide what they're finally going to do with it. And, it's part of that balance and back and forth communications and stuff. So, like, the presidential one is not always etched in stone. So a lot of people are really freaking out. It's just like the healthcare thing. Once it gets to the Senate, it's going to get tweaked pretty hard. And so we can be angry about it. But if it even gets to the first hurdle, which obviously the budget would have to do the same thing, there are a bunch of changes that would be happening here. So nothing's etched in stone for the beginning. But just proposing cutting the EPA is a dangerous thing. Yeah. Looking at the benefits that we've had from, reducing pollution and lung cancer, it says that in Southern California, children's lungs are 10% bigger and stronger than they were 20 years ago. I don't know about you, but if children's lungs are healthier and bigger, I'm going to call that a positive. You cannot tell me that the EPA is saying we're going to reduce pollution in the air and seeing that response, that there is not a correlation there.
Yeah.
That's a big...
Exactly, yeah. You're right. And that's, that's one of the things, I don't know. I have a hard time with that libertarian mentality. And this one almost feels like it's not as much a conservative thing as it's a libertarian mentality, as in, well, we should let...
Small government.
Yes.
Get the government out of my
Get the government out. Stop spending it and let other people make this happen. And in some aspects, I would have a harder time arguing that position. In the terms of the health care of people, I don't. In the terms of getting to the point where we can solidify this. So here's the problem. We have actual facts, statistics, that demonstrate people are going to go to the hospital. 180,000 missed work days have been alleviated because of this. 4 million days where people have to deal with pollution-related symptoms have been alleviated. That adds money, right? Or that decreases money that has to be spent, right?
Yeah.
You think about this, Hannah. You're decreasing money that needs to be spent on healthcare. And we're not even going to get into the statistics on the healthcare, because that's what we're going to do next week. I've literally spent a lot of time going through raw data and listening to other shows and critiquing some of the healthcare things. And that's a big point for me right now. And maybe because it affects me quite a bit in my healthcare situation. But how do people that are fiscally conservative look at this and go, well, they reduce it? You're now going to tell me that you're now going to try and put this price tag on these people not being as sick, on these kids having less cancer, having larger lungs. How do you put that price on there? And at what point can we just sit there and say, oh, it's okay, you're going to reduce this, and we're just going to accept this as an easable burden? That's ridiculous.
Well, what was it? The budget administrator for the Trump administration came out and he said that he was cutting things like the meals for students and things like that because they're not guaranteed to show results. He's not going to keep something like, giving these students after school meals or giving them free meals because it's not shown scientifically, statistically, that those free meals help kids do better in schools. That's what he was yelling. He was saying that I have to see exact results. Well, here it is. What we have links of here, these are links that show results. These are links that show healthier lungs, healthier children, lower levels of pollution, lower levels of acid rain. I mean, these are results that we are looking at this weird cognitive bias or cognitive dissonance where I see those results, but I'm not going to trust those results. I ignore those because those are against my perspective. And that's what usually happens with these types of things. So, I mean, we're talking about dangers to the clean water rule. I don't know about you. I like clean water. I don't like coal companies dumping their dirt and their refuse into my rivers. Well, that's going to be coming on here. And that one's going to be a little bit different when it comes to the rules that the Obama administration put on clean water, because it does affect some small businesses who really are not trying to screw things over. They just want access to clean water. And then there's obviously the EPA for the Great Lakes in the Michigan region for the money that they're not clean. They need to be cleaned more, and we're going to reduce almost all of it. So like 90% reduction. Those are dangerous things that we have some links in here for everyone to check out if you want to look a little bit deeper into this. But I think this is pretty much going to be a little shorter segment. We've got one other segment that we wanted to hit tonight, so I think this is going to be a cutoff before we get into another break, unless Tantastic has a little bit more information he wants to throw out at us.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think we've covered it all. Like I said, we don't want to make this a big political episode, right, with that whole thing. It always goes that way. But,
it's just good reading.
It is. But what I want to do is, we had, what did we talk about for that first hour? We talked about childhood cancer. We talked about death. We talked about life. I have fear. And I know we talked about this Huxleyan view versus this Orwellian view like a month ago about. And I go back to that episode. I've actually listened to that episode twice now, ironically enough. And
it's a good one.
I go back to this because I do have a fear. We start cutting these things. We start doing all these different things. What happens when we do this? Well, we harm people. We create this harm. But if everybody's so complacent in their life and complacent in what they're doing, they can't see things.
It's sedated by Facebook.
Yeah. And and I know this is an emotional appeal, but if you listen to the hurt in Jeremiah's voice, and I will just imagine eliminating the EPA or decreasing it to the point where cancer grows another 10%, another 15%. There's families that are going to have to deal with it. You could be part of those statistics.
Or the other direction on that. I mean, talk about the conservatives and stuff saying, listen, what you're about to do could put more lives in danger. It could, that pro-life perspective. Like, this could put some families that have to dealing with a cancer, with a child with cancer. Like, are you willing to take that money away? I wouldn't do it if I could save one life.
That's true. So, with that being said, we're going to take a really quick live commercial break so Hannah can get another beer. If you'd like to learn more about Cellar Door Skeptics, make sure you head over to facebook.com/Cellar Door Skeptics to get all our live updates. You can follow us there. You can follow us on Spreaker or even on iTunes. We've just recently been added to Google Play, so you can get automatic downloads by subscribing to any of those services to hear the latest from Cellar Door Skeptics. Because, as we said earlier, we are the links We are the show with the links. So please, make sure you head right over to iTunes, subscribe, or head right over to Spreaker to subscribe. That way you get the latest, the greatest, the most amazing content ever. This message has been brought to you by Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna. Wow, Chris. Wow.
Those are awesome. This is a lot of fun doing this stuff live. Yeah, it feels almost like we were a real radio show. It's like, okay, and now we're going to take a little break for our sponsor moment here.
Yeah.
This is fun.
If you'd like to sponsor the show, please send us an email at Cellar Door Skeptics or head over to patreon.com.
It's a new. I mean, it's a new twist. It's a new. I guess a thing we have to pay attention where we can't just like go wander off and do shots anymore. So we have to like pay attention to make sure.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to make sure we gave allocated time to Jeremiah tonight. So, and I didn't want to keep everybody too late. So the last topic that we have here, and it is the last topic, is entitled "The Lack of Curiosity Killed the Cat." What? Americans and science and museums. That's Hannah's run-on sentence for everybody.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to throw that in there because like I spent this weekend. So my wife and daughter went home to the in-laws and they just spent the weekend there. I had to work, so Friday night worked late, Saturday night worked late, and then Sunday I met them in Lansing for a place called Impression 5 Museum, and they have a special thing in there right now for Curious George, and my daughter loves Curious George, as do many children at her current age of a year and a half. But I was genuinely floored as to how great this place was, and it made me think a little bit more about museums and stuff. So the whole thing, we'll get to the Impression 5 in a second. Just the message I want to make on this segment really is just deep appreciation of these facilities in a country of increasing polarity on education. I mean, we're fighting about everything, and science used to be something that was like, okay, everything we can battle about, politics or whatever, but the science is at least this datum that we can come from where everything was even and consistent and always, smooth. And we did the best we could. And it seems like we're fighting on that. So I fear for the survival of these kinds of institutions as they are part of education that is not compulsory. So like, there's nothing that's forcing people to go see these museums and go see these amazing descriptions of everything that's happened throughout the world and see, full-on skeletons of the Archaeopteryx, which we have in Grand Rapids, a replica of it. But it's a beautiful thing. And so we've been to the Grand Rapids Children's Museum a bunch of times, and we love it there. But the place that I went to in Lansing, the Impression 5 Museum, just blew me away. And that's pretty much what what's your relationship with museum stuff? You guys do that much? Because I've gone probably 10, maybe 12 times since I was born to museums in the area.
Well, my dedication, sir, to the Children's Museum was very high. I think we had that membership for 6 or 7 years when my kids were younger. My kids love that. We went to the Grand Rapids Children's Museum more times, I think, than you can even imagine, literally. And so for me, my main museum, was the Science and History Museum, because I didn't grow up the same way you did. We didn't. We went to museums, and we had to skip the sciencey parts, right? My aunt and uncle lived outside of Chicago, so we would visit them every once in a while, and it was great because we get to go to the Science and Industry Museum, and I remember walking in and seeing the dinosaurs. So as a kid, for me, dinosaurs were the thing. I love dinosaurs. They were I read more scientific words in the dinosaur books than I got in school for the 10 years I was in a private school. Literally,
every time you came back with one from the library, your pastor was like,
No. My parents never discouraged it, and maybe it's because I didn't ask questions about the evolutionary thing, right? I didn't ask, oh well, what is that?
Where are they?
Yeah, what does that mean? I just accepted that dinosaurs lived millions and millions of years ago, and maybe someday Jesus would resurrect one for me. I don't know, but so for me, museums was always a love-hate relationship. I like going to them as a kid, but one of the problems is that we skipped over some of the parts that I now enjoy quite a bit. I love the science in them. I love going and learning the evolution. I mean, and you can ask, it's funny because my wife and I took are boys, and they're not young anymore. They're 15 and 14, for Christ's sake. But when they were younger, when we first started dating, even before we got married, we took them out to the science museum in Chicago. That was like our thing. That was our vacation for like 3 days. They had to drag me out of the evolutionary phase. I mean, I literally sat there and I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I literally read every fucking word from start to finish. Literally. Like, I mean, I walked, it took me like an hour and a half to get to that exhibit.
You're the slow guy that everybody's like peeking around because you're standing in front of the, yeah.
I was, because, but you got to think, I never had that opportunity, and none of it ever mattered until basically until I came out as an atheist, and then had to start to justify my worldview, like, oh, I don't believe in God, well, why? And then all of a sudden I started getting into the science, and I was like, I missed a lot of this. And for me, the museums hold a special place now, because to me, without that public knowledge, where would we be, right? Where can people go that they can get free information? Or hopefully free information.
Like sourced and accurate. So
yeah.
Museums are a place, so you put something up on a wall. This isn't the Creation Museum. Everything in these places is not even remotely controversial. Like, this is slow gathered information. There's not a lot of questioning of whether or not this is true. And if there is, they'll have a disclaimer put on there. It's like, this is a new discovery or something that they're still learning about. But one of the things that I was worried about when I mentioned a little bit ago is that I'm worried about attendance. And so we are seeing lower attendance in the United States for these types of things. So the number of visitors to core arts events, opera, jazz, musical, ballet, musical theater, and then museum and gallery visits has continued to decline, with just 33.4% of U.S. adults attending one of those things between 2011 and 2012. So this is an older thing, but a decade earlier, that figure was 39.4%, and in 2008, it was 34.6%. So we're just seeing a slow decrease in people that are going to these places of learning. It's one of the things that it's non-compulsory learning, and I love museums. I would go see them from time to time with my family and things like that. But it was never something that I genuinely appreciated until I started realizing that I'm going to be in charge of teaching a small brain about all of the things in the world. And so I've been using them as like this crutch that I can lean on, because they have things that are designed specifically for learning.
Oh yeah.
Who would have thought, right?
And you know the thing is, just wait, man, because you're unless you're going to homeschool your daughter, and if you do, that's fine. We already had that episode, right? But
yeah, no. I'm not going to, because I work too much, and I don't think my wife wants to do that. And so we'll probably find ourselves a halfway decent public school and just rock it out.
But the big thing you get to look forward to, and I do say this with excitement, is when the kids go on field trips to these museums. That's amazing. So another side tangent a little bit here, but my stepson, his school, they went out to Chicago to the Science and Industry Museum. And they had all these like cool little gadgets and things you get to play with. Well, it's just me and him. So when him and I went together, it was like probably one of the funnest times him and I have ever had, because like we both got to play with things and nobody was yelling at me to move. I didn't have any other, my daughters weren't there like, hey Dad, let's go look at this. Him and I got to solely spend time. And the best part about it is he got to ask questions, and if I didn't know answers, we went and found somebody. We walked and found somebody that had an answer. And if they didn't have an answer, they always had a place that they could refer us to. So the best part is, you get a daughter. Guess what you get to do going forward, man? You get to go and take her on these field trips. And you can be like, oh my God, I got to show you this. and you get to drag her around. She'll be like, Dad, you're embarrassing me. It'll happen. I know,
that was really what it was like Avalon loved a lot of the stuff that was in this. I mean, because the Impression 5 Museum in Lansing, you can literally see the state capitol from the road right off of it. It was awesome. It's right downtown. But the Curious George thing is a good thing to get people in there, right? It's a name recognition. So there's a Curious George exhibit, and it's got a lot of the Curious George stuff. So the farm and the fire in the hotel with the firefighters that come in and out, and the bellhop and the man in the yellow and everything. And so like they have that whole thing, and then you go through the rest of the place and you see stuff, and then you go upstairs, and it's an Aladdin moment, right? It's a whole new world. I was just completely astounded at how really really well created these exhibits were like the permanent portion of the museums. They had is the closest thing to be given all the stuff in those super serious adult museums, like the science industry museum you were mentioning. But I was given these things, and I was told to just go learn and play with them. So like they had tables set up, like you could create food chains and food pyramids and stuff with the arrows and the animals. So what animal would eat the other animal? And they had Newtonian. This was the best part. They had Newtonian momentum and fluid mechanics launching devices. The things that were explaining, like fluid mechanics using air pressure to blast out, shoot a tennis ball, and then Newtonian momentum, they were explaining with tennis balls and bouncing things, but also with ping pong balls and stuff. So like, there's a lot of bouncing and they call it dynamics in physics, but like it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And so Aveline, she's a little bit too young, but they had this little baseball thing where you throw the ball and you can see how fast it's going. Well, I played ball for a long time, and so like I was trying to get her to throw to see how fast a 1.5-year-old can throw.
And how fast was it?
The best part was that I just gave a little throw, and she looked at it and she saw me throw towards the catcher's glove at the other end, and she just grabbed the ball and started running towards the catcher's glove, and the meter read 1. It was so much fun. Like I wish people would understand the level of awesomeness that these places are when it comes to like just the general fun that comes through with the learning about the world. And there was bubbles and stuff, like people like you can pull these things and it's a wall of bubbles. I mean, it's a lot of stuff for children to learn about the world. And then they can get into this really serious stuff and go through high school or whatever. But like learning this stuff at the beginning, it's just so much fun.
Well, you're creating building blocks. But one of the other things here is the museums are very helpful, right? They help, for example, one of the in this article, they talk about how they save species. You can accredit museum support to support for more than 3,200 field conservations and research projects in 121 countries. That's amazing. Museums are involved with conservation, breeding, habitat preservation, public education, field conservation, and supportive research to ensure survival for many of the planet's threatened or endangered species. Now, in all fairness,
experts.
They
hire the experts who specifically work in one particular area to save those animals.
Yes, and so one of the things, for example, right? My friend and I sometimes watch documentaries, and we get made fun of because we do watch documentaries. And we were watching this India documentary, and they had this lady that has some PhD in biology, and I don't even know her title or her name, but this documentary, she was talking about how she was very amazed at this lion, right? She went and saw this specific type of lion that's specific to India, right? And there's not very many of them left, and it's very, basically they have some sort of an endangered species compound that you can, go out and see them in. But public can't do that. It's all, enclosed, right? Because you got to keep them from poachers. And at first, my initial thought here, and I'll just share this because it'll make me kind of look like an ass, but it's like, who cares? How many other lions do we have in Africa? Why do we care about these lions over here? And then she kind of went into the uniqueness of their species and why, what all these different things are. And then I thought, well, okay, so in the long run of things, these lions really aren't that amazing. They're kind of ugly too. The male lions were very ugly, and they're not something I would go, I want to save that. But when she started to describe, how they affected different ecological environments, right? And they started to, describe how everything started to work together, the more I thought, well, you're right. If we eliminate this type of a species, how does it affect the environment over there? And if we continue to not care about all these species, at some point it's going to have a ripple effect. And next thing you know, you and I are going to become close to extinct.
Yeah, you know what? I can see that one coming. So we talk about things like not having natural predators or taking a piece out of the food chain. I shared recently with someone who had been talking about the Great Barrier Reef, and so I shared our episode, and I went back and listened to our episode, and essentially we talked about the ripple effect there. Is that if one species dies because of malnutrition, not being taken care of, or environmental destruction, that species is food for another species or multiple species, and those species are multiple food sources for other species. Like there's a chain of things that happen here. So just one species dying out could affect 20, 30, 60, 100 different species, depending on the species density in the area. I mean, we're talking massive ecological disasters that could happen just from one thing dying out. A major lion like that being at the top of the food chain in that area probably wouldn't be, a catastrophic failure, but it'd still be a huge, important thing where, there has to be checks and balances on all these things. So, like, I love the fact that museums teach people about this, but they also have people that's their job is, okay, we're a museum. We love, like the Smithsonian Institute. We have very specific areas, but also we hire people to do research, and we hire people to find out and learn and create new things. Like, museums are these things that we don't think of as more as like, I would think that the younger people think of them as like an ancient institution, things that are old, like whatever forms of technology are being outdated. But museums are very well kept up to date when it comes to technology. It's just the people, in our opinion of things, is becoming less and less interested in general learning and scientific, curiosity, which is why I had mentioned that, lack of curiosity killed the cat, because the cat couldn't find any mice and the cat didn't have any food because the environment was dead the cat lived in, or whatever. I mean, this is a running on conversation that we could have for quite a while. But just, a euphoric moment when it came to spending a wonderful weekend with my daughter at a children's museum in Lansing.
It is. And you got to cherish those moments, Hannah, because in reality, as we in the show, we have to look at it and we go, what's been destroyed? As Kate in the chat points out, there's so much that gets destroyed, so much that doesn't get preserved, so many things that we aren't able to hold on to anymore. And I know life is all about change and compilation here, and everything continuing to move forward. But if we don't save some of this, what are our children going to learn? Are they going to repeat past mistakes? Are we going to see a large environmental disaster? Are we going to get to the point where everything in society just collapses around us because we have killed our ecological barriers? We've killed everything. The ripple effect will take hold faster. And I know we don't want to talk politics tonight. I know that. But some of me watches, and we look at people in the government that are anti-science. I can't side. Even if I was a fiscal conservative, I can't side with you if you're anti-science. I can't do it, man. I can't do this because the problem I have here, and the problem that everybody else should be having, is that even if you don't want to preserve this, you should be looking at the best way to go about life, the best way to help educate all the other people that are out there. And if we're willing to neglect the environment, and we're willing to neglect what we know and where we're going and where we've been, what do you think is going to happen in the future? In the future, all we're going to have is a bunch of nothing. And that means so much to me that we could turn around and make our lives better and make the lives of other humans better. And just think of the enjoyment your child gets out of these things. If we could bring that enjoyment to more people and help more people see these things, maybe they'll be a little bit more willing to be engaged in the process here. I had a point right there. Had to go there. Thank you so much. Engage yourself in the process. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Have a good night, everyone.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker, cellardoorskeptics.com.